Getting ready for work, Sasaki picks up his bag and tightens his tie. Then, on his way out, he grabs a garbage bag. Then he proceeds to take the trash outside and spots a crow. He tries to shove it away, but the crow does not care a single bit and keeps sitting. Then he gets greeted by a pretty girl saying good morning, and he turns back to her. He greets her a good morning too and smiles, and the girl walks away as if she were shy. Before he could stop, the crow ripped apart the garbage bag, ate something out of it, and then shooed him away. Moving on, he gets on the bus to go to his workplace while scrolling through his phone and reaches there in no time and gets to work. A few minutes into working, Sasaki is approached by a coworker, and he asks to take a quick look at his report before he submits it. Sasaki points out that the language bothers him quite a bit in the report, and he should add more details to it. Knowing how the department head is, without wasting a single second, his coworker goes and gets to fix the report. Then Sasaki asks if he could handle this report for him while he works on other stuff, because he can handle the report nicely. He explains that they all should work on things they excel at, so let him handle the report. Cheering as a whole, the colleague praises Sasaki for his thorough comprehension of the small details of his work. Sasaki, who is truly happy to help, is a bit distracted from the conversation by the distinctive, high-pitched voice of a girl. She is utterly fascinated by a kitten that is being shown on her coworker's phone. Her colleague, all smiles, says very strongly that she cannot imagine life without the cute cat. She joins in the conversation during this interaction, showing her own desire to love someone as deeply as her coworker loves her pet. Then she reflects on the built-in charm and cuteness of owning a pet and the delight of developing a close bond with a loved one. She also says she understands and wants to love someone as dearly as she does, and she says how adorable it is to have a pet. Sasaki can't help but peek in to take a look at the cat, and, oh well, he blushes looking at the absolute goofball and how cute it is, while she can't stop cheering about the cat literally. Well, Sasaki's coworker sees this and asks him if he is into cats, but he denies it nervously and says that he is more of a dog person and that he is more affectionate towards them. Sasaki gets called by some old man, and the old man asks if he could do this one about the school for him, and being the kind person, he says of course he would do that for him. That's how nice people get screwed for real. Sasaki goes to the man and takes the worksheet from him to work on. Then he narrates that they are not some big huge business, but just an average small company for now. Their earnings and wages are pretty average too, and the overtime pay is also very low, so he has barely been scraping since he got the job. He narrates all this while he chooses a snack for himself from the store and pays through his e-card. He's sitting in the peaceful park thinking about how brave he is not to quit his current job, and he finds a funny cat video to cheer him up for a little while. After going through a period of job scarcity, he finds the idea of going back into the job market scary. However, the sense of fulfillment that comes from playing a part in a role that makes him feel important strikes an intense nerve and offers a satisfying link to society. Sasaki resumes his work after taking a quick rest to stretch his shoulders. Sasaki graciously declines a considerate coworker's invitation to dinner after work, citing limitations on budgets. Unbothered, the colleague insists on taking Sasaki out to dinner, showing frank excitement and friendship. In my opinion, that sounded gay. Sasaki still says no and explains that he would feel bad later on so he could treat him some other time and he would be okay with it. The coworker agrees to it as well, and after a while, they all make their way to their homes. Sasaki takes the bus, first goes to the general store, and then makes his way home. Outside his gate sits a little girl, Ordinary, who says hello to him and greets him. With a smile on his face, Sasaki says hello back, and then he proceeds to enter his home and close the gate behind him. Later on, he sits down after serving himself some dinner after a long day. He has his dinner while watching a cat and dog video in which both of them are cuddling, and he is so moved by them because they look absolutely adorable. The next thing he knew was that he had to get a pet for himself. Well, he could not stop himself and went to the pet store, where he could see so many cute cats, dogs, birds, and whatnot. He enjoys his time looking at the adorable beings and making the most of them. But as Sasaki sees the prices for them, he jumps and thinks that his salary almost goes all into his rent, and he barely gets money left to spend on his luxuries. This is the sad part about his very low pay, which he chose for himself and even refuses to upgrade his lifestyle. Man discovers he is living on scraps, probably the reason his dating life is dry. Sadly, he wishes that he had some money so he could adopt a cat, which would be his very own, and he could live with it. He gets lost in his thoughts, and he thinks of a golden retriever dog as the bestest of them all, and he would have picked it because they are very lovey-dovey creatures. Suddenly, he hears a voice that says, "Pick me," and Sasaki follows that voice to the bird's aisle. As he looks at it, it is a cute little sparrow, and the sparrow says again to pick him up, and Sasaki dies of its cuteness. Well, this strategy works on him, and Sasaki ends up purchasing that sparrow, bringing him home in a cage, and buying a new one for him too. He carries the cage, which he places on a table, and transfers the sparrow into it. The way he jumps, Sasaki finds that so cute and covers his mouth while his cheeks turn red. He wonders that his 40th birthday is coming. He was feeling so lonely, and now finally he has a friend. Dating apps exist too, but to each his own. He thinks his heart feels like it is being healed again just by the cuteness of his pet, and then he puts some food and water for the sparrow and closes the cage so the pet does not stay hungry for really long. He changes into his pajamas, sits back on the bed, and drinks a soft drink while thinking how cute this pet of his is. After a while, he keeps the drink down on the table and then walks to the sparrow that he has to name but does not know what to name him after. He says that a cute one would be good while smiling at the sparrow, and the sparrow tilts its neck. The sparrow says that his name is Pier Carlo, an inhabitant of another world and a stargazer. That throws off Sasaki, and he wonders if this sparrow talks a lot. It could be that the pet owner taught him how to speak. He tries to brush it off, and he thinks that maybe this is normal for them to talk a lot and brush it off. So Sasaki gets back to naming him and wonders what name would suit him best, and the sparrow says again that its name is Pier Carlo. Such an old name for such a cute sparrow. Sasaki thinks again that he sure does talk a lot, and he must have had a lot of time on his own, and maybe no one picked him, so it is kind of understandable. The sparrow gets annoyed and says again that his name is Pier Carlo, and finally Sasaki listens to him, and the sparrow says that he is also an inhabitant of another world, and this is not his world. Sasaki gives the sparrow the nickname Peeps and asks if he likes it, but it makes a scary and pissed off face and makes Sasaki wonder if he actually even approves of it. Then Sasaki wonders if he is talking to a bird, and Yamada from the pet shop tells him that he can teach him how to speak. He also gets told that he can teach him how to sit on the hand if he gets Peeps to have some human interaction. But aside from that, Sasaki wonders if Java sparrows are able to talk with humans, so he tries talking to him to confirm that and asks him what he would like for dinner, and voila, Peeps responds and says he wants some Kobe beef. Well, Sasaki gets thrown off again, and Peeps says that Yamada was stingy as hell when it came to feeding him, and most of the time he would be eating shit meals. Sasaki can't believe that he is talking to his pet, which is literally a dream, but he is still in some shock. Peeps say further that Yamada was always eating some fine cuts of meat. Sasaki asks if he likes the feeding he gave Peeps, but Peeps says he does not like them one bit, and Sasaki says that he would not eat lousy food either, so he understands. But Sasaki says he can't afford Kobe beef right now because it is very expensive, and his salary does not allow that as a purchase. Sasaki says sorry to Peeps that he had to be bought by a poor office worker, and that some pork ribs would work for him. Well, Peeps is so blunt and says if he does not have some money, why does he not try and work for it and earn more than his usual pay? Sasaki wonders if he does not like the pork ribs that he already has, but Peeps says that since he was exiled from the other world and forced to be a sparrow, he has thought about many things. Hearing him, Sasaki wonders if he started talking about himself, and it looks like we're in for a trauma dump. Peeps says that he thinks about how he will return to his former world, what he needs to return, and what he will do if he actually does return. Sasaki says so, and Peeps says that he just reached the conclusion that he should just live the way he was born now. Sasaki thinks that despite the cute appearance and face Peeps has, he does say some true words, and his point of view does hold some great value too. It is not worth being fit for others' needs and wants because we all live once and die alone too. So Sasaki thinks it is good to want everything for themselves while they are still alive in their best form. And as a corporate slave, he feels this very much. May God keep us all safe from being corporate slaves. But Sasaki says, despite having such a great personality, why would Peeps be calling out for him to be picked? And now that just makes him way cuter, and he loves that about him. Peeps says that in the end, he needs some assistance in this world from someone to help him live his life, and asks Sasaki to help him. Then Peeps says that if he does so, making riches would be an easy task for him. Sasaki says that he would do anything for his cute little birdie, of course. Peeps get excited and say that it is done, and the contract has been finalized. With that said, Peeps does something with his magic, which confuses Sasaki, and Peeps says that he will grant a portion of his powers to him now. Sasaki says to stop and wait, but Peeps does not stop. Gave me the flashback of what the girl in my basement used to say. I should not have let her go. Sasaki narrates that he felt a warm sensation on his chest. Then, after this entire thing gets done, Peeps says that now they both are connected through a path, and he wants to open this cage for him. Sasaki thinks that he does not understand what is happening, but he needs to go with the flow for now and see what happens next. He has a lot to say about this entire thing, but he does not want to piss off Peeps by complaining too much. Since they would be living together, it is better they live on good terms instead of bad ones, and he opens the cage for him. Peeps climbs on his hand and sits on Sasaki's shoulder, which makes Sasaki so happy, and he is so glad he picked him. Then Peeps turns to him and says that now he can use his power through him since they both are connected. Further, Peeps say that his flesh is quite frail, but is still better than a small bird's flesh. At the very least, using magic should not cripple him, Peeps says. Sasaki says that if it is bad for his health, then he would like to refuse the offer, and it would not suit him since he is already getting 40 years old very soon. But Peeps does not care about it and spreads his wings, saying they should now go on with it. With that said, a magic portal appears under Sasaki, and both of them reach some strange place, and Sasaki is literally shit scared because this place is hella unfamiliar. Sasaki asks Peeps where they are, and he says that they are in the world where he used to be before he got reincarnated, and it was where he used to reside. Peeps turns to Sasaki and tells him that this is the provincial town in the kingdom of Rizz, Batrium. Hearing him, Sasaki wonders why this is what people call another world. Later on, they teleport back to their own world, and Sasaki gets to work. While he is working, he is approached by his coworker, and he says that he reached work early today. He says that everyone got late today because of the train delay except for both of them, and asks Sasaki if he took an early train or started a morning routine. Sasaki is confused and asks what his morning routine is, to which the coworker replies that going to the gym and making a healthy lifestyle. Sasaki laughs and says that he does not go to the gym. The coworker asks if he can have a word with him after this, and he says of course. They both go grab a drink, and Sasaki asks him what the matter is. The coworker says that he would like to be independent with him because he plans to quit this company next month. So he was thinking of having someone with his experience help them out, and he says he can offer him more than the company is paying him right now. The coworker tries to motivate him and says, why not aim for the top together? They should have big goals. Sasaki is shocked, or that is what his facial expressions say very clearly, but he answers him to give him a little while to think it over with a smile on his face while he finishes his drink. The coworker says that if he would like, he could see how things go from outside for a year or so to understand what kind of work they would be doing. Further, he says that Sasaki might be uneasy with youngsters like them putting together a startup, looking at his age, so it is natural, but Sasaki says he meant that because his personal life is getting kind of busy, and that is why he said that. The coworker asks if he is up to something new, and Sasaki says he just adopted a pet, and the coworker seems not satisfied with his answer. But he was not lying about his private life getting busy because of the pet he adopted. Sasaki thinks that ever since the day he went to another world with Peeps, his life has been changed, and it is just keeping up with the change. First, due to the teleportation, he does not have to travel on that crowded bus with stinky people anymore, thanks to Peeps. Sasaki wonders that people say that when they lose one stress, they start to feel very free and light due to not having a burden and feel full of energy to do other tasks too. So he was able to portray Peeps' ideas to do business between the two worlds. He wonders he wants to be able to feel positive about Peeps' suggestion that it is okay to earn a lot at once. He thinks that it seems that if you do business with a high-ranking aristocrat, you'll be able to get a girlfriend, but it is difficult to do business all of a sudden, so first go to the person who introduced you in that town. He gets some groceries from the store and wins a chocolate in the lottery, and for the first time, his luck really worked. Getting back home, he sees that Ordinary is sitting on the gate as usual, as if she doesn't like sitting in her home. She says that he looks like he is bringing a man in right now to serve because he has some groceries in his hands. He gives her the chocolate and says that if she doesn't mind, he won the lottery at a convenience store a while ago, so he would like to give her the chocolate. He says he doesn't like chocolate at all, so she can have it. Ordinary takes it and says, "Thank you very much." He enters his home and tells Peeps he is home. He gives his hand to Peep, and he climbs his shoulder. Then Sasaki tells him to go to the other world, and they teleport in an instant. Peeps shows him something new and says this is Herman Trading Company, the nobleman who runs this town, and he will be trading with him soon enough. The stuff from one world to another, and soon they can make riches out of it. Sasaki says that he wonders if it is okay to visit with one of my friends on board, to which Peeps say that there is no problem as long as you say they are related. Sasaki sits in the office and narrates that the product he brought in was 400 gold coins, which were converted into Japanese yen, which was about 400 gold coins. 400 million yen, but the prices of processed products here are horribly high. To be exact, it is 4 million to 40 million yen. The man in the office is terribly impressed, and he looks at the paper and pens and asks where Sasaki has these papers and pens from. Sasaki says that he is sorry, but the supplier is a secret, and he would like to keep it to himself, so he says further to let him replace it with the paper and pen that he proposed this time. Therefore, he will not leave this contract with him, and he hopes that they can continue to be friends in the future. Returning to his own world, Sasaki narrates that from then on, they lived in other worlds and in his world, gathering together in groups and trying new dishes. He says that he received a magic lecture from Peeps, and he learned a magic spell to move from place to place that he definitely wanted to learn. He was surprised to find that he had about half of the current paper, and he suddenly decided to memorize it in between work. He says that he gets short of breath when he tries too much, so the trick is to keep working hard. I work hard too with my old lady receptionist. The other day he had some time left before his lunch break and thought it was a good idea, but a problem arose. Because he still had time before his lunch break was over, he tried casting some simple magic. Sasaki says that he has to think about it and cast a spell, and oops, he accidentally lights a fire, which triggers the fire alarm, and he runs from the elevator. Later on, he visits the other world, and Peeps and him are munching down food at a restaurant. He told Peeps what happened earlier. Hearing that, Peeps says that apparently he is more than he thought, and it seems like he has aptitude. Sasaki asks what he means, and Peeps says that he did not think he would be successful with just one shot, and that is a big deal. Sasaki says that he feels so happy when someone praises him. Then they leave the place, and Peeps says his stomach is full. Sasaki says that it would be nice if he could do some eatery business as well, but as he says that, a man gets thrown out of the restaurant, and his bosses say to never show his face again. Sasaki wonders if he literally just saw a firing happen in front of him. Sasaki goes to him, gives him his hat, and says, if he does not mind, please let him know the story he had to face. Then Sasaki narrates that he told me that his name is French, and that he has been working in restaurants since he was a child as a Frenchman. He had been working as a chef for the past few years, and had been improving his skills so much that he became jealous of him. He was somehow falsely accused of stealing money from his co-worker. Apparently, today his efforts to convince his boss failed, and he was laid off. He is not a bad person, and that doesn't seem to be the case, thinks Sasaki. Besides, he is a chef who can recreate the taste of what Sasaki just ate. In that case, Sasaki asks French that, if he does not mind, he can open the store with him, and of course he would be the manager. The French can't believe that and scream out of disbelief and happiness. Then Sasaki says that after that, he met with Mr. Mark from Herman and asked him to help him with the store, equipment, and ingredients, and he went to the main street. Opening a restaurant in a prime location was a dream come true. After a month, he hands over French's salary for his work, which was 5 gold coins, which sends French into shock, and he says that is it even okay for him to receive this much. Sasaki sees that he did not receive much at the previous store. He says that he will pour his soul into this job now and serve him the best. Later, Peeps and Sasaki are having lunch. Peeps says that it seems like he did not have a restaurant in his original plans, but he wonders what his intentions are. Sasaki says that he thought it would be convenient for Peeps to eat rice, so he decided to try beef coat if there were any similar ingredients. Even if it is impossible, he might be able to recreate a similar taste. Peeps asks, was this all really there for him? Sasaki says that it is tough financially in that world because he is buying food here. He wants to save money on food over there. Peeps asks if there is no hope of getting promoted. Sasaki says pretty much yes, for the time being, and he guesses it is impossible since he hasn't raised a single yen in the last 5 years. Later on, Sasaki says that after a few days of practicing magic, he decided to return to her apartment. Before that, he practiced the first pitch of magic, water. In addition to magic and earth magic, one can also learn magic that makes icicles fly. However, he is still not sure about teleportation magic, but he is sure to get his hands on it soon. They return to Sasaki's world then and go to the general store. Sasaki asks Peeps what he should buy next time. Peeps says that he has heard that hunting is popular. Further, he says that he doesn't know what they call golf in this world. Sasaki is impressed that he has been studying really hard, and he is giving me the internet and stuff. Then Sasaki comes to an aisle and says that he is thinking of purchasing outdoor goods, and it seems like a good idea. Peeps say that his inquiries are strong, and he has a great eye for them. Sasaki is happy that he was praised by Peeps, and now he thinks he can buy it with confidence. He looks at a product, and this is a smaller telescope. Peeps says that it looks like it is going to sell for a high price. Peeps looks at something and asks, "What's with all the lively hardware, and what is that?" Sasaki tells him that it is a Jotoko knife. He further tells Peeps that it has a lot of scissors, tweezers, bottle openers, etc. Even though it is small, it has a lot of things attached to it, and it is very handy. Peeps says he got it, and Sasaki says, "Let's take this with them and go with the other things too." They both go to Peeps' world then, and Sasaki says that consultations regarding new products went smoothly, and the initial goal of dealing with aristocrats was achieved. He says that he was able to meet the nobles of the town. He says that by introducing how they were able to do business with an aristocrat, unlike before, he has to be careful about this. He has to be more careful about the items he brings in from now on. The Lord asks in his name, and he says it is Sasaki, and the Lord says that he just wanted to ask him something. Sasaki says go ahead, and the Lord says that he heard that he is from another continent. The Lord says that he has heard that these kinds of things are common and distributed on the continent. But in this country, it is considered a special item that only a select few, like the aristocrats, can handle. The Lord further says that he wonders if it is because of its status as a product that only a limited number of people can handle. If so, does that mean that he is a person of relatively high social status? Sasaki wonders that even though they are from that continent, they are no good at dealing with people of a status equivalent to that of aristocrats. If one lies about their high status, they will be in trouble when their lie is discovered. Sasaki says he is a craftsman, and during the exhibition, a ship crashed, and he ended up on this continent. The synergies that he brought to him in this way are things that we already had and things that he has newly created. The answer was pleasing to the Lord, and the next thing he knew was that from now on, the Lord said that Sasaki would send his products to the Herman Society. The Lord says he understands that this could have a major impact on the lives of those who live in the area, and they are asking those people to come to the mansion today. Further, he says that living in this town where people are allowed to enter, there are things that he wonders about that will help him cool down. Then, ending the conversation, he says that if there are any items brought in, please let them know the name of the item he is bringing in from time to time. Then they shake hands in agreement. In this way, Sasaki was able to connect with the Lord, which was his goal, and he was able to make transactions based on his worldview. He is gradually starting to live a slow life in another world where he is studying magic to manage a restaurant. Then he returns to his own world, sees his phone, and realizes that today is his junior's farewell party. The coworker asks us to talk about independence together. Sasaki says, why does he want him to join that bad? The coworker explains that because Sasaki feels so full of energy these days, he gives off that kind of aura. Sasaki thinks that is because he got a new bed and was able to get a good night's sleep. Maybe it is because of that the bed he has been using at an inn in another world recently doesn't have an edge, even if he stretches out my arms and legs. It is so big and deep that he can't even reach it. Me when I'm doing your mom, so lately Sasaki has been feeling cramped in his narrow bed at home. Sasaki says that his body is gradually getting used to the luxurious lifestyle. In the future, he will have to sleep in addition to eating. Then he orders 2 more drinks for him and his coworker before he leaves. On his way home, he ponders how his life changed. Suddenly, he sees that a man is assaulting a woman and first tries to run away, but gets back, shoots icicles at him, and he starts to freeze. Sasaki gets scared that this might be bad, but he does not know how to unfreeze it, so what can he even do now? Now he will be known as a murderer, but the lady unfreezes the guy, throws him, and points a gun at Sasaki. She yells at him and asks, where is he registered as a person with special abilities? Sasaki says he doesn't feel like a person with extraordinary abilities. The lady said she is talking about the icicle he hit earlier. Sasaki gets scared and explains that it has only been a few days since he started being able to hit the icicle and do some more magic tricks. The lady says that she never thought she would be saved by a stray with supernatural powers. But now Sasaki gets told by her to come with her. The old man's about to lose his virginity in a dark alley. She assures him that she won't harm him, and he can trust her with it. She keeps her gun away. She arrests the guy who was trying to kill her and puts her down in handcuffs. Adam mommy putting someone down in handcuffs is a life goal. While she calls someone, Sasaki wonders if they are also magicians like him. Sasaki thinks that it wouldn't be surprising if someone like her came to the present day from another world. He approaches her and says that he would like to have a word with her for a while. He says he is ready to come with her, but is it okay if he goes back to his house? She says that in that case, she thinks he will be staying overnight today, so he shall bring a change of clothes along with him. Hearing her, Sasaki says that he has work tomorrow as well, but the girl says that the organization will take care of that and he needs to not worry. He gets home and tells Peeps about it, telling him the entire thing that happened while packing a bag. Peeps says that even though she's a woman, he can't feel any magical power from her. Sasaki says that he said she has supernatural powers, and they are also magic. Hearing that, Peeps says that it is interesting that this phenomenon is based on a different framework. Further, he says that this world follows a different path than ours, and similar phenomena do not exist. Sasaki adds that if something like that exists, it is a genuine great discovery. Then Sasaki asks if Peeps does not mind if he could come along with him, and he says alright, there is no problem with it. Then Sasaki picks up his bag and goes outside. But he gets stopped by Ordinary. She asks if he is going out, and he says yes, he is going out. Ordinary says that it is hard to stay up late. She says before he leaves, could he talk to her about something for a while if he does not have a problem with it. Sasaki shuts the door and says that he is in a bit of a hurry right now, so could this wait for a while? She said of course it can. She sees Peeps and asks about the Java Sparrow, and Sasaki asks if she likes it, and she says no. Oh, to be as blunt as her. Sasaki says that he just got it a while ago and then left. He goes to the lady and says he is sorry to have kept her waiting. But if he is staying overnight, can he take his pet with him? He can't leave it behind for too long, and Peeps shows her that he can chirp too and looks absolutely adorable. The lady says of course he can bring the cute little pet with him. Suddenly she realizes something and says that, come to think of it, she has not introduced herself, so she gives her name and says it is Hoshizaki. Sasaki tells her his name too. Then Hoshi says that she appreciates how he saved her and thanks him for his help. Then they both sit in the car and she says to Sasaki to let her explain about people with supernatural powers. Magicians who are born spontaneously. Calling such a being that way causes a strange ability to occur. The ratio is approximately 1 in 100,000 persons to have an ability that has been said once. Then from then on, there will be an additional ability for each person, and they will not be able to learn a second one. This has not been confirmed, but repeated use may increase the power or limit the range of action. She says that she can explain it by her special ability that it spreads, and she can not only manipulate water but also change the temperature of it pretty quickly. Sasaki wonders why it seems that it is completely different from magic. Hoshi then says that the power remains the same whether or not it comes from discrimination, which can turn a town into farmland overnight. Further, Hoshi explains that naturally there are many dangerous supernatural powers, including things like that, and people like the man from earlier have committed criminal acts. Then she says there are people with extraordinary abilities who cause great confusion in society, and we need to take care of them. Sasaki asks her, what about the target? Is that Hoshi's job? She tells him yes, that's right. People with supernatural powers are on the floor where supernatural powers spoke. Sasaki says that he does not know of any such organizations that require one to register as an active organization. Hoshi says of course that it is obvious that he did not know that. Well, that is because it is a state secret. They get out of the car, and Sasaki says that it is such a pretty building. She says it is from today onwards his new place of work. Hoshi shows him her phone and says he is going to work here, and she already registered him while they were traveling. Sasaki is shocked to hear that. She brings her to an office and says that the treatment is attractive. He will be treated like a national civil servant, and he can earn a large salary depending on his work. Hoshi says that she is sure he will be receiving a detailed explanation during the acceptance inspection, so let's leave it at that. Then Hoshi says that he should let her quickly confirm what he can do with his magic. He thinks that the title of National Civil Servant is attractive. However, it is dangerous, so keep it small so that it does not become a force in the field of conflict, Peeps advises. Well, Sasaki does try to be low-key and says all he can do is hit the icicles and nothing more. Hoshi asks if it is okay if she can see it, and he says yes and creates an icicle. After having a look at it, Hoshi says that in his case, he can create something from nothing. She gets excited, and his special abilities are very similar to hers, which is great for both of them. Hoshi begins cheering like a child and says that usually she can't take out the water for her, but she can usually bring it in a plastic bottle or buy it from a vending machine. She says that she had to buy it, but if he were here, the water problem would be solved. Happily, Hoshi says that now she can use her abilities without any restrictions. Peeps and Sasaki are looking at her and think that Hoshi is a complete workaholic. Then he sees her doing something on the phone, and he thinks that she is assigning a project to him without even his consent. He stops her and says he has not even started planning his next job with all of this in mind, and he does not even know that he is the right person for it. She says to him that he will be getting paid a lot, and it seems like Sasaki has no escape from Hoshi. She says that the salaries of talented people who did not tell the right people on the job are out of the blue in the eyes of people who don't know what to do. He is then sent to his room, and he is really sleepy and wants to sleep and get some rest. He is worried about the fact that he has to go to another world tonight to deliver the goods and pay in French too. As he is about to talk to Peeps, he realizes that there is no way we can have a conversation with him here. He says that there is no way he is secure here. There are surveillance cameras installed. Seeing a grown man beat his stuff won't be that good though. He turns to Peeps and says to wait a little longer. And Peeps chirps to him as if he understood his intentions. Then Sasaki says that they should go on a walk. They leave for a walk, and he says to Peeps that he is sure he is being watched. Sasaki says that even though it is impossible to buy her, at least she's over there, and they are alone for now. Sasaki says to him that he wonders if something will happen over there. Peeps say that the time here would be just a few minutes, and hours will pass in that other world. So Sasaki just needs to make an excuse that he had to use the restroom. They enter a store, and Sasaki asks to use the restroom. Peeps then teleport him into another world. Sasaki narrates that he told Mark that he would have some time until the next transaction, and he agreed to it with a smile on his face. After that, French's salary and light allowance were added and handed to him. He entrusted his funds and hurried back to Japan. He sleeps till 6:15, and there is a knock on his door, and he wonders who came in so early. Sasaki opens the door and sees that it is Hoshi. She seems so energetic and says it is about time to work. Sasaki looks so sleepy and says sorry to bring this up so suddenly, but he is really sleepy, and he would like to decline the offer if possible. He notices she is working with thick makeup. He says he does not know anyone other than her, but it is not easy for him to go out with her, but this is how it is. Further, he says he would like the person who should be responsible for determining whether the response has met the needs of the entire organization to take a look. Then Sasaki is about to close his door, and she stops it, saying he would like to work with her with a charm in his eyes. Sasaki has given up hope to lose his virginity. He sweats and says he wants to objectively confirm his position within the organization. It is natural for someone in a position to want to work with her. Sasaki wonders, from the looks of it, she seems to be someone working in the field. Hoshi gets bored and says after all, it is difficult to work with an older person. Sasaki tries to cover up the fact that he understands that people naturally open up to him. She says, alright, she will make him meet the person they will be working for. Sasaki wonders that he does not mind that, but she seems very uninterested, and her answer was not pleasing enough. Then they both get approached by a man who is section chief. He tells Hoshi that he understands that she loves her work, but she can't just hire anyone she sees, and she should be careful about certain stuff. Then he turns to Sasaki. He says that he is sorry for being such a busy person and for how their first meeting was. He says his name is Akatsu, and he is the person who will be his boss because he is also Hoshi's boss. Akatsu turns to Hoshi to complete the report in the office, then goes to Sasaki and hands him over a phone. He says that he will use that phone to contact them from now on. He says he will keep in touch with him as much as possible on a regular basis. Akatsu says to make sure to carry his private phone with him in case of an emergency call. Sasaki wonders why he hates it so much that he gets emergency calls so often that he can't relax even on holidays. In the case of the other world, he will put it away since there are no radio waves over there. GPS learning and tracking can also be improved. Then, Akatsu says that if there is something that bothers him or that he needs to ask, feel free to call him by phone or leave him a text regarding it. Later that day, Sasaki narrates that after returning home from what he wanted, he visited again yesterday, and on that day he got a shitton of things done to him. We will spare Sasaki from the mom jokes because his mom is already dead. Sasaki has to take health, physical, and athletic tests. During the training, they took photos for test certificates and learned new information. The Cabinet Office Top Phenomena Countermeasures Bureau, where he works, is not an ordinary organization and does not exist externally. No one is allowed to talk about it outside to anyone. Their public position is that of a police officer. Sasaki further narrates that he and Hoshi are the chief inspectors and no wonder she carried a gun. Then Sasaki asks the instructor what kind of business Hoshi has. He says that she doesn't say much about her openly, but why is Sasaki asking about her? Well, Sasaki says that he had a feeling that he was about to be paired with her, so he wanted to know about her as much as he could. The instructor laughs and says, "Please do your best," while he sweats. Sasaki exclaims that she sure is a troubling kind of girl, and he is about to end up in a pair with her. Then Sasaki narrates that, just like that, the training ended and he received some pocket money as preparation. He was given 1 million yen this month and was already exhausted. He thinks he was running low on cash already and is grateful to them for the temporary amount that will help. He gets back home and suddenly he gets approached by Ordinary. She says it is late and he wonders what the heck is wrong with her. Ordinary says that he returns so late after work, literally in the middle of the night. Ordinary then says sorry for being so outspoken. Sasaki says that she said she had something to talk to him about, and Ordinary is happy that he remembered. Ordinary says that there was something she wanted to give to that old man, so she made some cookies for her in return for the chocolate. She learned to make them during the home cooking classes and handed them over. Sasaki says to her that he is thankful to her for giving him that, and he will devour every bite of it. Then she asks about the woman he was previously with and if Sasaki is dating her. Sasaki wonders who she is talking about, and then realizes that maybe she is talking about Hoshi. Sasaki answers her and tells her that she is his boss, and that is it. Ordinary says that she looks quite young for her to be his boss. Sasaki says that she is in a position of superiority, and it is a meritocracy. Ordinary gets excited and asks where he works, and as he was about to tell her, he remembered that there was something he had to keep in mind. He was told a specific example of the kind of punishment a person who accidentally leaked information would receive. He was shocked that they would be killed as a punishment. As they were talking, Ordinary got shy, blushed, and ran back to her apartment. It looks like someone has daddy issues that could be fixed by a daddy living beside her. Sasaki enters his home too and greets Peeps and tells him to go on a walk with him. Sasaki leaves his phone inside, and they both go on a walk. Peeps tell him that someone came into his room during the day today, and he was probably busy installing something. Sasaki says that maybe they put some surveillance cameras and devices in his room. Peeps says that he thinks it was installed, and he has seen people using the internet and things like that. Peeps says that it is good that he woke him up while he was sleeping, as the guy was plugging in devices. Then they both return home, and as he returns home, Peeps shows him the cameras, which Peeps had already destroyed and took out. Suddenly, Sasaki's work phone rang, and it was Akatsu on the phone. He picks up and says hello, to which Akatsu says he is very impressed by his skills. Sasaki says he is fully aware of the apprehensions, but please refrain from having surveillance cameras or eavesdropping devices at his home. Akatsu says that this kind of thing continues, but Sasaki says he would like to take action in accordance with his transition. Akatsu says he is sorry, but this is just a test, which he passed with success. Sasaki asks him what he means. Akatsu tells him that there are many people who don't think well of their organization. Further, he explains that it is a test to test his skills, and if he thought of the organization as his enemy, he would not have removed the cameras right away. Adding on, Akatsu says that if there is a chance to catch a whistleblower, he probably won't immediately remove the information as soon as he notices it. There have been several times when such people have asked him if he will pass the exam right away or if he dares to do it. Sasaki keeps listening, and Akatsu says that when it comes to people with extraordinary abilities, he tends to think of people who are a bit too aggressive and think of the chosen people. In order to manage this and encourage people to register with their organization, we need people like him. Honest and talented people are most welcome, and he would like them to work with me to their fullest, says Akatsu. Then he thanks Sasaki, asks to excuse him, and cuts the call. As the call cuts, Peeps comes ahead and says that it is hard to let his guard down if he is a senior in an organization that is doing business. Then Peeps asks him if he will be stocking up today, and Akatsu looks at the clock and says he almost forgot about it and he can do that another day. He seems really tired and lays back down on his back. Peeps starts yelling. He can't sleep right away because he still has to make his dinner and he has not eaten a single thing. Sasaki wonders that his dream of a life in another world seems far off for now, and with that, he falls asleep like a baby. On the other hand, Akatsu has an evil look in his eyes and is browsing through the personal data of Sasaki on his laptop. He says that it looks like he can use him pretty well, and oops, looks like Sasaki could be in for some trouble with these new people.
Source: Uncle from Another World. During the fall of 2017, Takafumi learned that his uncle, who had been in a coma after getting involved in a traffic accident 17 years ago, had woken up, and so he goes to meet him. Upon arriving, his uncle starts talking to him weirdly, which prompts him to think that his uncle is suffering mental damage, which only solidifies after his uncle claims that he was excited to return from the Another World Grand Bahamol after 17 years. When Uncle asks our boy about what the other family members are doing, he learns that the whole family is separated. Even his sister didn't want to do anything with him, which prompted Uncle to write down something in a small notebook and chant Ikura's Kora after that. Uncle tries to prove to Takafumi that he went to another world by using magic, which initially fails, much to Takafumi's dismay. MC then tries to explain his financial issues and inability to support him when suddenly Uncle triggers a wind magic while using Japanese, proving his claims. Seeing this, Takafumi gets excited and forgets about his talk about not being able to support his uncle. He then asks MC about the console wars and the situation about Sega. He becomes distraught when he learns that Sega had pulled out from the console market, so he immediately writes down on his small notebook and chant Ikura's Kora after that. Takafumi gets interested and asks what Ikura's Kora is, and Uncle reveals to him that it's the memory erasure spell, which he uses whenever he experiences something unbearable. However, he writes it down in his small notebook before erasing it. Takafumi gets interested and asks if he could read the notebook, which he immediately regrets after reading, and asks his uncle to use Ikura's Kora on him. A week later, Uncle gets discharged and moves to live with Takafumi in his apartment. Meanwhile, Takafumi decided to monetize his uncle's powers and started posting videos of it on YouTube, which helped to generate 60,000 yen in ad revenue. Later, Uncle questions Takafumi on why he got such a big room to live alone, to which he replies that he was initially a room share setup, but because of issues, it didn't work out. Uncle is surprised to hear the term room share, which he never knew, and thinks that Takafumi was living with a girl. Takafumi clarifies it and is surprised to learn that room share didn't exist 17 years ago, while comparing the smartphone to an electronic dictionary, to Takafumi's surprise. With the talk buddies going on, Takafumi asks Uncle about his companions in the Another World, to which Uncle informs him that he was mostly solo for 17 years. The primary reason is that everyone in that Another World was beautiful, while he was hunted down as a subspecies of orc. Uncle talks about one particular person who followed him around regularly and harassed him and would launch attacks and verbal abuse towards him. Takafumi is sad to hear that another fantasy worlds aren't that good either. Uncle continues to say more about that person, on how the first time he saved her, rather than saying thanks, she was pretty rude to him. As Uncle continues to talk more about the person, MC realizes that the girl was at tsundere and remembers that its concept didn't originate until 4 years after Uncle departed for his journey. Uncle lamentates that things didn't go well for him in the Another World and shifts his focus to interact with his commenders from around the world on internet, but is unable to keep up with the terms and things going on. One day, Uncle shows interest in buying a turn model cell phone from an auction. Takafumi says that it won't be used under modern standards since it uses an old 2G signal, but Uncle isn't worried as he won't be using it anyway, as there is no one to call to. While Uncle is surprised by the amount of stuff a smartphone can do, he laments about their lack of gimmick. Uncle then notes that 17 years has changed a lot of things and developed innovations. He then mentioned how he once innovated an item in the other world and showed his memory about the incident using the spell Ikura's Elran. He had crafted an ever-brimming pot of water using spell cards for a village suffering from a drought. Takafumi is impressed by the news and compares it to the overpowered modern science trope. He thinks the villagers must have some praises and gratitude for Uncle. But in reality, the villagers had tried to hang Uncle because the shape of the item was sacrilegious, and they smashed it. And while the villagers were trying to turn Uncle, Elf arrives to stop them. While Elf was trying to mediate the situation, Uncle took the chance to escape. Takafumi becomes frustrated with the case, though Uncle misinterprets it as Takafumi doesn't like the first-person view of the incident. So Uncle turns the point of view in his memory and shows Takafumi how he was treated. Takafumi asks Uncle if it's possible to see what happened with the elf, to which Uncle focuses on the background and sees the elf being a bit disappointed that Uncle had run away. She starts fighting the villagers who attacked her. Suddenly, Uncle gets a notification of the auction on the cell phone closing down soon and in a hurry orders without checking the shipping cost, which turns out to be 2,000 yen for the item, since someone from an isolated island was selling it. Takafumi laments that if the location was closer, they could have picked it up personally to save the shipping cost and considered the incident a lesson. To Takafumi's surprise, Uncle suddenly jumps out of the window and flies away, returning from his trip 30 minutes later with the cell phone in hand. He shows it off to Takafumi, who asks Uncle whether he could pick up a similarly auctioned item, to which Uncle agrees. Takafumi receives a package of rice delivered by Amazon and asks Uncle to hand him something to cut the box. Uncle gives him a short sword which surprises him. He urges Uncle where it suddenly appeared. Uncle then shows him his storage magic, which is withdrawing his small notebook from it. Takafumi asks if Uncle had brought more stuff from the other world, to which he tries to take out a magic sword and accidentally hits the wall, much to Takafumi's dismay. Uncle next takes out a ring with a magically crystallized mermaid's tear which is mounted on a ring carved from rainbow coral, which is rare enough to sell for enough to allow a person to create a castle with its money. Listening to this, Takafumi wanted to sell the ring, but Uncle informed him that he had already tried to sell, and it was priced at 50 yen because the materials used in the ring were so rare no one knew what it was, so it was treated as a children's toy. Uncle starts thinking about ways to boost his view count by using new inspiration. Takafumi asks whether Uncle wanted to give the ring to someone as he was carrying it around, to which Uncle says that it was item drop. He got after clearing a hard dungeon. Seeing Takafumi down afterward, Uncle asks whether he wants to talk about love and shares the story of his first love, Sonic and Tails. Uncle is reminiscent of visiting the toy store to admire them while viewing the title screen. Takafumi asks Uncle whether he had ever fallen in love with someone, to which he gets the answer of Uncle falling in love with a human game character. Takafumi asks if Uncle ever meets girls in the other world, to which Uncle agrees and shows him his memory of saving a girl and her siblings from an orc. While initially thankful, the girl eventually overcomes despair upon seeing Uncle and decides to sacrifice herself by giving herself up to Uncle to save her siblings' lives. Having misinterpreted the situation, Uncle thought that the girl was happy and thankful to him, but he suddenly blanks out and thinks that some goblin might have attacked him from behind, unknown to him, who threw him into the river. Takafumi notices in the memory that the girl's siblings were making suspicious moves while trying to get behind Uncle and considered the possibility that it wasn't a goblin attack, but rather the sibling attacking Uncle from behind. He later encounters with the lover elf girl. She seems to have saved him once again from a bad danger. She then starts acting all tsundere, saying those keywords, and when she asks him to return the favor by staying with her forever, this happens.
変な意味に取らないでよ。
サイズは合うか。おじさんがなんかとんでもないことしようとしてる。このディオだ。
Which he later takes out and sells for money, much to Elf's dismay. Takafumi admires the tenacity of the elf girl. On a rainy day, Takafumi narrates how the recent decline in views of his uncle's videos has his uncle vow to stop using online auctioning. He then reveals that he recently won a magazine that listed the result of the Sega Saturn Reader's Choice. Before being sent to the other world, he didn't have a chance to read it. Takafumi, however, doesn't care. The results are a surprise since a PC-ported Bisudo game wins the contest. After reading this, Uncle hovers outside in the pouring rain, gets struck by lightning, and proclaims that Guardian Heroes should have won it. He then goes on a tirade about the game's incredible quality and its placement in the game ranking list. Once the rain settles afterward, MC serves Uncle some coffee while consoling him that a TGA Saturn RPG placed in second. He then learns that Uncle didn't play RPGs due to his lousy memory surrounding the game mechanics. The mentioning of RPGs jogs Uncle's memory of a time that reminded him of an RPG encounter he had in the other world. Casting Akuris Elran, Uncle shows MC a memory of where he battled a village elder who called him an orc. After that, he learns that the legendary dragon of the fire shrine close to the village was roused. The way to defeat the dragon is with a special ice sword from the Ice Clan. However, the descendant of the clan is a rowdy roughneck named Mabel. Upon meeting with Mabel, she tells Uncle about a particular flower that her mother once showed her. Uncle then leaves, reaches the fire temple, and slews the dragon himself without needing the sword. This has MC note how his uncle should have retrieved the flowers for Mabel, but claims it'd be too hard for him to remember. After the rest of the memory is shown, the doorbell rings, and it's a package delivery containing a Sega Saturn and 20 games for it. It was intended to be a surprise for Uncle, but he is now hesitant to give it to him because of his recent outburst about the ranking and their tightened budget. Uncle gives off an astonished look, making Takafumi unable to comprehend whether or not he's happy or angry. So to cut the tension, MC reveals that he also has Guardian Heroes, and elated, Uncle asks if he wants to play. The two then played a game together. Walking home at night after a shopping trip, Uncle talks about how the city's atmosphere that night reminds him of a game called Alien Storm to Takafumi. It also reminds Uncle of New Year's Eve in the other world, piquing Takafumi's interest. At home, Uncle learns that his favorite series Kachikame has ended. Soon after, he casts Akira's spell to show MC his memory of New Year's Eve party. Although everyone was happy and having a wonderful time, Uncle was ostracized by them all and ate alone. He then returned to his room for the night, and the memory ended. Claiming that nothing else happened after that, Takafumi asks if the elf appeared, and he denies it. Apathetically, Takafumi asks Uncle if he wants to play some Sega Saturn together, and Uncle happily agrees. During their game session, Uncle reveals that Mabel did visit him that night, and Takafumi turns off the game system and demands that he see what happened during her visit. Once again, casting Rizz Elran, Uncle shows Takafumi his memory of Mabel, who had the ice sword on her person, asking him how to overcome being a coward. Learning that it was the village elder who told Mabel that, Uncle gives her a motivational speech, but it takes a drastic turn when he learns that she's a recluse and suggests she stay that way. The memory ends after Mabel offers her the ice sword, but he declines it. With that, Takafumi languidly gets up and asks if Uncle wants some soba noodles, and he accepts the offer. As they eat their soba noodles, Takafumi asks Uncle if he played video games in his teen years on New Year's Eve, but he answers that he watched a comedy show around that time called It's Okay to Laugh. Presently, the show has since ended, which shocks Uncle, and he learns that show ended 3 years prior and a year before the current Koshikame ended. They continued their conversation throughout the night, discussing games and eating their soba until the new year rolled in. On New Year's Day, Uncle creepily compliments a woman named Fujimiya, who creeps her out. Takafumi then approaches her, revealing they have been friends since middle school. They briefly chat, and Takafumi invites Fujimiya over to his place, to which Fujimiya claims she'll come over after she drops off her groceries. 30 minutes later, Fujimiya arrives and receives a text from Takafumi about how he's out getting snacks, but will be home soon. Fujimiya enters the place, and shortly after, Uncle arrives. He then tries to erase her memory of what she saw, but Takafumi stops him and explains that she's his friend. Upon hearing this, Uncle prostrates himself to Fujimiya and thanks him for being Takafumi's friend. Afterward, Uncle and Takafumi explain to Fujimiya about Uncle's background and as a YouTuber. Fujimiya then proclaims that Uncle should leave Takafumi's life and live his own, and Uncle deduces that she loves Takafumi. Despite her denying it, Takafumi claims they're 100% friends, and that's it, but Uncle doesn't buy it, claiming he's seen the entire Neon Genesis Evangelion series. Although everyone back in the day watched it, he solely watched it because SEJ sponsored it. Takafumi then realizes that Uncle will realize that the elf was, in fact, in love with him. On the other hand, Uncle uses a couple of EVA characters as an example of Takafumi and Fujimiya's relationship. After Uncle moves Fujimiya to tears by telling her a story about a video game character, Uncle swiftly reads her mind and what she did before she arrived there. The doorbell rings, and as Uncle goes to answer it, Fujimiya demands to know who he is, but before he can answer, the package man calls for him. Fujimiya then suggests that Takafumi cut ties with Uncle, alluding to them becoming roommates, which she clarifies is not the case when Takafumi thinks that's what she means. As it turns out, the delivery was 15 kilos of rice, and the package man and Fujimiya were notably furious for different reasons. Currently, Uncle's secret is known by one more person. Takafumi returns home to find Sumiko with the elf from his uncle's memories. 75 minutes earlier, Takafumi informs his uncle that Sumiko will be arriving there later. Takafumi then reads an email addressed to his uncle, who couldn't read it because it was written in English. Hence, Takafumi uses a translation app to make it legible, and he then warns his uncle that he will be jobless soon. The cause of this is due to YouTube's newly imposed restrictions wanting users to have 1K subs and 4,000 hours of watch time from users. It's then revealed that the source of the low viewership and sub count is due to Uncle's reply comments. Uncle then confessed to Takafumi that he hadn't seen such a response from people since his time in the sealed city, Luveldram. It was at that time 1,000 monsters broke through a barrier surrounding the place. Dying to find out what happened, Takafumi is then shown the memory of when his uncle was in the city. In the memory, the elf clears up a misunderstanding that Uncle was an orc and later uses a Chinese idiom that Uncle clarifies was a translation error from the magic he was using. The memory continues as Elf talks about the barrier surrounding the town. Uncle casts a spell to destroy it, out whim. An army of giant cyclops led by a cloud dragon then appears outside of the city, ready to invade the place. When Elf leaps into action, the barrier re-erects around the city, and she crashes into the reformed barrier. It turns out that Uncle asked the spirits to repair the broken barrier. Despite how Uncle was suspected of being the one who broke the barrier, Elf clears the situation upon her return. In return for not telling everyone there that he broke the barrier, the elf asks Uncle to take her to dinner that night. However, by that time, Uncle had fled on a wagon to avoid being extorted by her in the future. Recalling that he used to ask the spirits for help in the past, Uncle pleads on his YouTube page for people to subscribe there so he can save it. Initially, Takafumi is saddened by that as internet trolls prey on such weakness. However, the opposite occurs and Uncle gets enough subs to save his channel. By that time, Sumiko arrives and wonders what is going on there between Takafumi and his uncle. Afterward, Sumika lectures Uncle about the social decline of middle-aged men in the appropriate workforce and how he, as a YouTuber, isn't financially adequate. On the other hand, Uncle brushes it off, and Sumika mentions that Takafumi isn't able to have a girlfriend live with him due to him living there. Hearing that, Uncle suggests that Sumika live there as well, but Takafumi refuses that suggestion and leaves to do some errands. Once Takafumi is gone, Uncle tries to have a heart-to-heart with Sumika about Takafumi's relationship with her. However, Uncle's comparisons with video game romances don't align with her. Hence, Uncle steps out of the room, and when Sumika tries to apologize to him, Takafumi's aunt appears. Takafumi's aunt looks exactly like Elf, only in Uncle's clothing. She then tries to continue her heart-to-heart with Sumika until Takafumi returns home and outs her as Uncle. After an epiphany, Takafumi suggests they create another YouTube video about Uncle's transformation magic. Although Uncle refuses at first, Takafumi convinces him after promising to play Guardian Heroes with him. After the video was in the process of being uploaded to the internet, they watched a memory of Takafumi's past with Sumiko that reveals their relationship was bittersweet. Once the video was fully uploaded to the internet, they watched it. Although it was a significant success in viewership, Uncle is left despondent how the video didn't include him playing guardian heroes and reforms back into his true self. This shocks Sumika as Takafumi cheers about the success of the video they uploaded. Despite Uncle's pride as a YouTuber torn to shreds, a deluxe sushi dinner was enjoyed when the payout from the video was delivered. A flashback of Takafumi shows him being bullied by two students about the fantasy-themed light novel he was reading. Eventually, an even bigger bully appears, who was Sumika. She handles the situation between the bullies, earning Takafumi's respect. This event is shown to Uncle, who, like his Takafumi, was enamored with Sumika on how she handled the situation in her youth. Noting that she became more girly in middle school, Sumika shows the two an old picture of her and Takafumi as evidence. Impressed by it, Uncle takes several pictures of it with his old phone, and Sumika offers to send it to his phone via email. However, Uncle claims that his phone is incapable of accepting emails and calls, which raises the question of how he can contact Takafumi. Sumika then notes how delicious the coffee tastes, and Takafumi reveals that Uncle gave him 10 yen for his birthday, so he purchased a coffee maker. After Sumika comments on how practical giving him 10 yen to Takafumi is, Uncle comments how he didn't know what was appropriate for someone like him in that day and age. For her birthday present to Takafumi, Sumika sends MC a text of a picture of her in a swimsuit from middle school. Immediately, MC asked his phone how to delete the picture since he could be arrested for having an underage picture on his phone. Then, receiving a notification about a sale on coffee beans, MC rushed out of the apartment. Uncle then tells Sumika that her swimsuit picture just lost to some coffee bean ads. Followed by an outburst that she is causing Uncle's coffee to spill, he freezes her and the coffee. Startled by this outcome, Uncle uses some fire spells to thaw her out and offers her some towels to use for a shower. While Sumika takes her shower, Uncle steps out for a couple of hours and leaves some of MC's clothes for her to wear as hers dries off. When Sumika is done with her shower, she puts on Takafumi's top, and after this, Takafumi enters the scene. A stare-off between the two occurs, and Sumika then shrieks in embarrassment, causing Takafumi to leave the scene while apologizing. Later, Sumika confronts Takafumi, still wearing just Takafumi's top, and the two have a brief heart-to-heart with each other about Sumika being so responsible. Takafumi then notes that the flag he posted for his uncle was positioned at danger, and immediately, Uncle returns home. Informing his uncle that he saw Sumika in an improper state, Takafumi requests that his uncle erase his memory of it. Before Uncle can do it, Sumika stops him, and the two continue their heart-to-heart moment. Uncle watches, perplexed by the situation, but seeing that bags of coffee are there, he offers to make some more. On Sumika's 20th birthday, Takafumi and she enjoy some beer and snacks. Uncle soon joins them, and Takafumi notes that he was 17 when he was sent to the alternate world and is now 34, but Uncle corrects Takafumi, stating he's 35. Since he doesn't have a proper present for Sumika for her birthday, Uncle gives her words of his philosophy. A pinch is a chance. Uncle goes on to explain the meaning behind the phrase about changing one's perspective on a negative outlook can change a situation for the better. Impressed by the philosophy Uncle imparted to them, he shows them the first time he had alcohol. Takafumi and Sumika were shocked to see how similar he looks in present times and that the memories shown before were of him as a teenager. Elf then appears in the memory wearing a lovely green dress, and Takafumi explains to Sumika that she's Uncle's stalker. As the memory continues, Elf confronts Uncle about the barrier he broke the other day and, as a bribe, offers to buy her some food to keep her mouth shut about said barrier. The elf then changes the subject concerning how strong Uncle is, how he once saved her from a deadly venom dragon, but he brushes it off as hard work and training. They then talk about the blaze dragon that Uncle also slew without the ice sword that was supposed to be necessary to kill it. Showing proof of his achievement, Uncle shows Elf the blaze dragon fire he got as a spoil to Elf, which she claims would be revived if he opened it. Uncle then recites his catchphrase, revealing that he learned from a Puyo Puyo strategy guide. In the present, Takafumi and Sumika are despondent over learning this, and Uncle then goes to play some Puyo Puyo. As the memory continues, Uncle takes a reluctant elf back to his inn, and present-day Uncle interrupts it by asking if Takafumi wants to play with him. Takafumi then has Uncle play Burning Rangers instead and continues to watch the memory as Uncle leads her to his room at the inn. From there, Uncle thanks Elf for taking him back to his room, and the following day, she confronts him and demands to know his plans for that day. Once the memory was over, Sumika takes a drink and forces Uncle to drink too. This causes him to become drunk, and when Sumika tries to bail because of it, Takafumi stops her, and Uncle decides to take her home by a wind spell. The outcome of this makes the three of them fly high in the sky.
The next morning,
in Takafumi's apartment, Sumika suggests that Uncle become a pro baseball player. This gets a tepid response from Takafumi and Uncle, but Sumika claims he can use his magic to pitch super fast balls. However, Uncle claims that in his youth, he was looked down upon by the baseball team in his class, but he still respected them as they earnestly practiced daily. Hence, for him to cheat using magic would be against his morals as he dedicated himself to playing alien soldier from 6th to 11th grade, which shocks Takafumi and Sumika. Sitting at the table, Uncle mentions to Takafumi and Sumika the dangers of baseball terminology compared to other sports. The two then mention a few examples, and Uncle mentions a time when he was almost assassinated. He then shows the memory in question, where he tiredly wanders through a forest after completing a dungeon. As the memory continues, a person is shown close behind Uncle, who is revealed to be Mabel Rayvale of the Ice Clan. Mabel freezes Uncle's legs in place and tackles him to the ground. Recognizing Mabel, Uncle asks why she's there. Mabel sarcastically answers that she was relieved of her duties because he slew the dragon without using the ice sword to seal him away. Not understanding that she was sarcastic, Uncle notes how happy he was for Mabel, which both Takafumi and Sumika realized off the bat that she was. Although Uncle was at her mercy, Mabel asks why he didn't draw his weapon at her. Uncle answers that he knows she has no intention to kill him. He then asks her if she's been eating properly, causing Mabel to whimper and cry and pass out on Uncle's lap. Uncle then drags Mabel to his room at an inn and places her on his bed. After Mabel wakes up, he gives her a loaf of bread and asks why she didn't become a hermit in her village. Mabel answers that her tree home was cut down for firewood and that she was given an ultimatum of either becoming the village pet or leaving to make it out on her own. So Mabel froze all of the villagers' feet, dripped icy cold water on their necks, and then fled. Shocked by Mabel's tenacity, he asks Mabel if she really doesn't like working, which she mentions a few possible work interests of hers, but denotes that they're all too labor-demanding. Relating to Mabel's predicament, but notes that he makes his living as an adventurer. Complimenting Uncle's gumption in how he makes his living, Uncle then tells Mabel about how he beat Alien Soldier on super hard mode in under 30 minutes. Uncle suggests that Mabel make a living as an adventurer using the ice sword. Despite her hesitance in doing so, Uncle coaxes Mabel to do it, claiming it's her life and she should choose how to live it. Elated by the suggestion, Mabel claims she'd still need to break the seal on the sword, which is linked to her heart, but believes that becoming an adventurer would fix her gloomy personality. He then claims there's nothing wrong with being an introvert. Suddenly, the ice sword starts to crack and breaks. Subsequently, he points out the ring he gave Mabel as she slept on his bed, which causes a misunderstanding between the two, where he clarifies how he thought she would sell the ring to be able to live an easy life. Because of Mabel's fury, the ice sword refreezes, and Mabel tries to attack Uncle, forcing him to restrain her to the ground. Elf then appears in the room and witnesses Uncle holding Mabel in an awkward position, leading her to believe he was trying to take advantage of her. Elf quickly comes to release Mabel from bindings, and she then freezes him and bonds with Elf. Back to the present, Takafumi mentions how impressive it was for Uncle to beat the game in under 30 minutes. Uncle then starts to brag, but becomes notified when Takafumi learns from the internet that someone else beat it in less than 12 minutes. A little later, Uncle asks Takafumi about region-coded games, and Takafumi gives him an explanation about it. Sumika, however, continues watching the memory, revealing people of the Ice Clan share the blood of those from another world. They all then continue watching the memory, where Elf talks about how Uncle nearly traumatized Mabel by entrapping her into marriage. However, Mabel brushes it off and explains the history of the Ice Clan's founding when a samurai from an alternate world was sent there 400 years ago. The samurai asked the god who reincarnated it to give him a sword capable of slaying it, which amused the god. However, Elf already knew the rest of the story as she read it from a book in a library. Because Elf ruined her story, Mabel began crying, and Elf consoled her. Frustrated that he never met God, he wasn't given a god-slaying sword. And any special bonuses for reincarnating into that world? Takafumi suggests that Uncle rewind his memory to 18 years prior when he was sent to the alternate world. After pursuing his memories, they watch a memory where Uncle is resurrected into the alternate world and is sequentially beaten for being mistaken for an orc variant by a trio of men. As the men beat up Uncle, Sumika hears a voice interpreted as God, and Takafumi uses his translation app to translate what God was saying. God said it would grant him an ability of his choice, and Uncle, at that time, wanted to be able to understand and communicate with the people of that world. Although Uncle was now capable of speaking their language, he was captured and sold to a freak show for 3 bronze coins. Before Uncle continued the memory, Takafumi suggested they take a coffee break, and they all enjoyed some coffee. A memory shows where Uncle was appraised for 3 bronze coins by a slave trader. After being caught by the 3 men he approached when he first arrived in the alternate world, the 3 men selling Uncle tried to bargain with the slave trader to raise the price. On the other hand, the slave trader refuses, and when one of the men tries to sell a scouring pad, it sells for 120 bronze coins. This revelation shocks both Takafumi and Sumika about how dirt cheap Uncle was considered compared to an everyday item. Watching this memory, Uncle and Takafumi get synchronized nosebleeds. It's then revealed that Uncle used a memory wiping spell on himself after the experience, and Takafumi after reading about it in his uncle's diary. Uncle then has Sumika read the first page of his diary and reveals that after he received his memory erasing spell, he immediately used it to erase his horrible experience. Takafumi notes that erased memories can return, and Uncle claims their nosebleed is a warning from the spirit of memory. The memory continues. Uncle was locked away in a prison and forgotten by the slave trader for about a week, and he managed to survive on rainwater. To keep himself sane, Uncle talked to a ray of moonlight that shone through a crack in the ceiling about a Sega game called Pulseman. Eventually, Uncle learns that the ray of light he was talking with was the Spirit of Light Collide, which grants him his first spell, a Sword of Light. He uses it to escape his imprisonment, and both Takafumi and Sumika realize that Uncle used his language translation ability to communicate with the spirits. It would explain how Uncle briskly repaired the barrier he broke in the city that the monsters would invade. As the memory continues, Uncle releases the other captive monsters there, only for them all to turn feral and attack both him and the slave trader. Not wanting to live his life as an ordinary commoner, Uncle uses his newly acquired light magic to save the slave trader and himself. Although the slave trader was initially thankful, he became terrified by the bloody and crazed-looking Uncle, who then used his magic to transfer him to a safe location. Throughout the night, Uncle slew all the monsters, barbecued and ate them by morning. He notes that the start of his 17-year tenure in the other world was pretty good. Hearing this shocks both of them. Sumika then tries to leave because of how it was getting late. However, right then, Uncle mentions how bad it got from there on out, revealing the time when he saved the elf girl from a dragon, which gets both of their attention. Sumika calls to cancel her fried chicken dinner. Uncle then shows his memory of saving Elf from a venom dragon. However, she becomes sad by how he super fast defeated it right after arriving. He explains that he merely attacked the most vulnerable spot created by Elf's attacks. As the memory continues, he gives Elf his hoodie, which escalates into an explicit misunderstanding between them. That interaction with the elf girl would mark the troubled relationship he had with her. And he gets a couple of troubling times he had with her, including when he was frozen in ice. Sumika then curiously asks what happened after that night. So Uncle shows it, revealing both Elf and Mabel stayed in bed with him during the night. After Uncle and Elf have a moment together, it's ruined by Mabel, who cries for her mother in her sleep about not wanting to work. Elf then wakes her up with a single karate chop, and a flustered Mabel tries to explain her sleep talk concerning not wanting to work. Uncle then reminds her that she can sell the ring he gave her for a hefty sum, but Mabel is hesitant to do it as she's inexperienced with bartering. Hence, Elf offers to sell it in her place, but Uncle suggests that Elf take care of Mabel, and she believes it means becoming Elf's pet dog. Afterward, they all eat breakfast together, and Mabel formally introduces herself to Elf and Uncle. Elf then introduces herself as simply Elf and her mission to collect ancient relics. Uncle introduces himself as Wolf Gumblood, a person from another country trying to make his way back to his home country. Once the introduction formalities were over, Elf announced that she'd be heading back to Ikozen, and Uncle mentioned why she'd return to the place where she sold her ring at. Takafumi and Sumika note that Elf wants to buy back her ring. Mabel then asks what Uncle will be doing, and he claims he'll try and clear a nearby dungeon a hero was trying to clear, when Mabel offers to help him. However, Mabel's nap time intervenes with Uncle's patience, and he goes to complete the dungeon by himself. Noticing how late it was, Uncle states they should end it there, and Sumika laments about not going out for fried chicken with her friends. So Uncle treats her and Takafumi to some ramen. Elf, wearing Uncle's hoodie, wakes up in her bed and, with her feet, fetches her necklace. Uncle then enters the scene and asks for his hoodie back, but she refuses as he gives it to her, so now it belongs to her. Hence, Uncle magically restrains Elf and tries to take his hoodie off of her, but cannot entirely do it due to the cuffs around her wrists. Elf then suggests that Uncle undo the spell to make it easier on himself, and when he does it, Elf knocks him unconscious. Feeling remorseful for what she did, Elf patched up Uncle and left him in his room. In the present, Uncle and Takafumi watch the memory, and Uncle mentions how messed up what Elf did to him was, and Takafumi simply agrees with him. Internally, however, Takafumi thought that his uncle should have simply let her have the hoodie. Uncle would say that she took a lot of his stuff and never returned it, but the only thing she gave him in compensation was a dress that Sumika would try on. Afterward, Uncle announced the official title of the Otherworld language translation skill that he obtained would be Wild Talker, the name that Takafumi suggested. Sumika then leaves, claiming she has some college work to do, and Uncle plays Golden Axe while Takafumi watches. Curious to know what system Uncle was playing on, Uncle answers that it's the Mega Drive, something he purchased after saving up a lot of money. Recalling a memory of when he met and joined a group of adventurers, Uncle begins to show Takafumi the memory. At first, the adventurers mistook Uncle for a goblin, but after overpowering them, explains that he's not a goblin. The group's healer, Alicia, then recognizes Uncle as the person she and everyone else mistook him for an orc during the Winter Festival. Uncle then recognizes them as part of the people who grouped up on him when they thought he was an orc. Rega and Edgar are then formally introduced. And despite their disagreement with Uncle joining them to help them with their goblin subjugation quest, Alicia asks Uncle to join them to help them save the village of Dold from a goblin outbreak, and Uncle immediately agrees to help. Approaching the horde of goblins, walking down the curved, narrow pathway, Uncle single-handedly fights the horde with moves he learned from Golden Axe. Despite Takafumi believing that Uncle wasted a lot of energy using Golden Axe moves, Uncle defends the use of the moves, noting how it saved his life. Alicia then mentions how she saw Uncle rebuild the barrier around Luveldram, and although she denies telling it to anyone, Uncle erases her, along with Edgar and Rega's memories. Despite this, Uncle would meet with them again and would be forced to fight them all again and clear up the misunderstanding that he's not an orc. They inform Uncle that a monster inhabiting a temple is attacking people in a nearby village, and Uncle misunderstands it as Sonic. He then proclaims his hope to communicate with the monster and find out the reason behind its nasty behavior, so they can negotiate with it to prevent fighting against the monster. The monster then appears, a regular giant hedgehog, and after Uncle gains the ability to talk with it, he incinerates it after learning it enjoys killing humans. In the present, Uncle surmised that the condition to activate his Wild Talker ability was to have the desire to have an earnest chat with a target. Back to the memory, Uncle asks about the world's hero, but the memory is cut off when Sumika's phone starts to ring. Takafumi then convinces Uncle to help him return Sumika's phone to her, and they fly to her location, where they find Sumika being encroached by a dude that came straight out from NTR Hentai. MC then gets furious. Before he goes down to return Sumika's phone, Uncle temporarily gives MC the same magical abilities as him. Takafumi then approaches them and gives Sumika back her phone. The man becomes a bit apprehensive toward Takafumi, who then realizes that the man was really Chiaki, Sumika's younger brother. Uncle then appears at the scene, and when she introduces him as the person she wanted to introduce to Chiaki, Uncle introduces himself as the uncle from YouTube. However, Chiaki doesn't know who he was or what a Sega game was. While Uncle talks with Chiaki over YouTube-related stuff, MC reveals to Sumika how he thought Chiaki was her boyfriend. Furthermore, MC reveals that he temporarily received his uncle's magic to deal with her boyfriend. Takafumi then magically turns himself and Sumika invisible, leaves doubles of them behind, and flies them to a higher location. They would then head into an empty classroom where they had a heart-to-heart about another time Takafumi stood up for Sumika when a group of older kids ganged up on her. Takafumi then plays the memory in question and reveals that Sumika was the aggressor who provoked the fight in the first place, and that Takafumi misread the situation. However, Sumika was flattered by Takafumi's approach. She falls in love with our main boy even more after hearing those lines. Few moments later, a lady that Sumika knew named Soei appears and is formally introduced to Takafumi. Sawa gets along pretty well with Takafumi, who gets jealous when she tries to exchange numbers with Takafumi. Afterward, back at Takafumi's home, Sumika claims she returned Chiaki home and asks what the trigger for Wild Talker is. Takafumi informs her that it's out of desperation or whim. This prompts Sumika to ask how Uncle could relearn that world's language. Uncle reveals that he was afraid that Takafumi would sever ties with him for being a cookie person. Uncle then continues the memory of his time with Alicia, Edgar, and Rega, where Alicia reveals that she's the chosen hero. Memory Magic reveals that Alicia and her party unintentionally took credit for slaying a horde of monsters that Uncle slew. When Uncle tries to depart, Alicia stops him and asks if he was the person who re-erected a barrier surrounding Louveldrim. The question alerts Uncle, but Alicia retracts it, claiming she understands his desire to keep a low profile and promises to keep his identity a secret. Eventually, Uncle and the hero party would travel together and reach the Labyrinth of Deep Darkness, an A-rank dungeon. Upon entering the dungeon, Uncle immediately casts 3 spells, which helped locate a shortcut to the dungeon's treasure, a wand. Underwhelmed by how uneventful they had gone through, Uncle erased the hero party's memories and made them go through the dungeon again so they could properly earn the wand. After this, Uncle doesn't erase the hero party's memories to make them believe they'd have completed the dungeon on their own. Before leaving for the capital, Uncle receives 3 healing talismans from Alicia as thanks for his help conquering the dungeon. Once the memory was over, Takafumi and Sumika praised Uncle for handling the situation with a calm and cool head. Uncle claims it was because of the game Shinrei Juzutsushi Taromaru. Their conversation shifts over to how hot it is and that schools typically have ACs in their classrooms. Hearing this irks Uncle, who recounts that such a luxury didn't exist in his school days. The conversation abruptly shifts again after Takafumi has a memory relapse of receiving verbal abuse from a teacher and suggests they watch what happened when Oji-san visited the capital. Uncle's memory reveals him abstracting information from a military commander in front of his legion of soldiers. He would then teleport to the capital, where a clandestine meeting was held between Commander-in-Chief Ricardo, his aide Miller, and Prelate Karn. Appearing before them, Uncle decries that Ricardo's actions involving the hero party were a martyr ploy to exploit their title by aggravating a national crisis, sequentially boosting the military's finances. Ricardo defends his actions, claiming the hero party knew what they signed up to become adventurers. Because of his timid attitude, Uncle couldn't argue against Ricardo's logic and was surrounded by army soldiers. In retaliation, Uncle transformed into the greatest monster he'd think of, his second-grade middle school homeroom teacher, Tabuki-sensei. As Tabuki-sensei, Uncle slaps Ricardo into submission, which causes Miller to try and defend her superior, but she's slapped too and concedes to Uncle. Richardo then mentions that recent tribulations involving the slaying of dangerous monsters and the destruction of the Luveldrum barrier had disturbed the world's natural order. All of this was unintentionally done by Uncle, who couldn't rebuke it with Tabuki Sensei's slapping method. At that moment, Mabel appears and seemingly has an epic fight against Uncle. In reality, it was an illusion created by them using ice magic. The real Uncle and Mabel watch said fight from the sidelines, where it's learned that Mabel became a knight of the kingdom. Their conversation turns dark after Mabel asks Uncle to lose purposely, giving her a pay raise and making him become her underling, which upsets Uncle. At that moment, Richardo and the soldiers realize that Mabel was in cahoots with Uncle, forcing her to fight Uncle for real. Amid the fight, Uncle severs a mind-controlling magic previously cast on Mabel and reveals Karn to be the culprit. Ultimately, Uncle vows to protect the country if any crisis arises. He then transforms into the Blaze Dragon and leaves the scene. Sometime after this, Mabel was sadly dismissed from her position as a knight of the kingdom. With Uncle's memory over, Takafumi had grown scales around parts of his body. Uncle reveals that it was a repercussion from the fairies for making a great demand and then abruptly ending the contract with them. As Takafumi transforms into a Draco-human, Uncle transforms into one too, so his nephew doesn't feel alone. Subika would be left stunned by what she had witnessed there. In August of 2018, a major heatwave swept across Japan, and Takafumi and Uncle were feeling the effects of it. Uncle, especially, whose Seka Saturn wouldn't boot up, causing him to have a meltdown. Subika would arrive there shortly after with ice cream as Takafumi looks on the net about how to repair a Seka Saturn. After they enjoy the ice cream, Sumika asks why they haven't thought of using Uncle's magic to cool the place down. Immediately, Uncle casts ice magic in the room, cooling the place down. Subika suggests they invest in an A/C, but the lack of funds prevents that. So Sumika pitches the idea of posting his memory videos online, but Takafumi rejects that notion. To argue this point, he has Uncle show an old memory of his watching a memory of his uncle's memory. Spirits are suggested as a way to get funding, prompting Sumika to ask what they are. Uncle explains they're only fairies in name and doesn't know what they look like. The ice spirit that Uncle summoned to cast his magic details that it wants a cow's head as compensation. It gave the warning if they didn't accomplish this, the fairy threatened to freeze their fields for 10 years. However, it changed its mind and accepted a fish head as a compromise. Uncle was remarkably calm and happy about the resolution, but his attitude disconcerted Takafumi and Sumika. To that point, Uncle notes his time playing dark-themed video games in the 90s caused him to become desensitized. An altar is set up for the fish head sacrifice, and Uncle starts craving it, blaming said craving on his time as a Draco, which Takafumi can relate to. Their conversation then changes to Uncle talking about the danger of staying transformed for a long duration of time, and pulls up another memory of his. It was the memory of his time as a Blaze Dragon, where his inability to transform back because he was trapped in the dragon's spot pattern. Eventually, Tsundere Elf would locate Uncle after following a rumor about his location and fight him. Ultimately, Elf managed to overpower Uncle enough so she could mentally connect with Uncle's mind and help him revert back. Afterward, a noble accompanied by an army of soldiers who wanted to deal with Uncle notes his surprise about what he had discovered. Elf recognizes him as the head of Regfalgen family, with whom she has a financial debt. It's also revealed that Elf is a princess, shocking both Takafumi and Sumika. The memory continues as Regfalgen and his army of soldiers taunt Elf, calling her princess and prompting her to draw her weapon, but is stopped thanks to a dark pact card. Regfalgen then monologues about how foolish Elf was using herself as collateral and how using her will open doors for his company. However, Uncle wakes up and releases Elf from her magical restraint and, believing he's repaid the debt to her, tries to leave, but is held back by Elf. An argument starts between the two and is stopped by the upset Regfalgen about his predicament. A large warrior named Doldal steps into the picture and asks if it's alright if he intervenes. However, before Doldal could, Uncle puts on the same ring Elf had, which aggravates and causes her to shake the ground with her bolstering energy. Uncle then grabs onto Elf as the ground below them falls, revealing a swamp. Regfalgen, distraught over wearing the ring, orders his men to retreat. Down in the swamp, Uncle and Elf have a brief heart-to-heart until they start heading to a nearby hot spring by a volcano. On their way, they talk about Uncle's bathing obsession. When the memory stops, the three realize how cold the apartment is getting, and Uncle quickly stops his ice magic. However, that doesn't stop the apartment from becoming freezing cold, making them endure the temperature. Laying on a bed wrapped snugly in separate blankets, Sumika opines that Uncle invested in an AC, but he has his pride as a YouTuber. Takafumi then suggests that his sword of darkness could cut the cold air, but Uncle claims it doesn't work like that and then demonstrates how it only severs power flows. Their conversation then switches to Uncle's modern-day ignorance of what Bluetooth is. Another memory is shown on how a deadly parasite killed someone, and Uncle visits Elf and Mabel to check and see if they have it. While they don't have the parasite marking on the stomach, indicating whether you have it or not, it's revealed that Uncle had one. Back in the present, the apartment had since heated up. Takafumi and Sumika, who had been watching the memory, asked for it to end. With fish off the menu to eat, they order and enjoy some pizza together. Soe arrives at Takafumi's apartment complex building and searches for his apartment number, until she's approached by Chiaki. Startled by the young boy's presence, Takafumi walks down a set of stairs, and his nonchalant response to the situation doesn't mitigate Soe's nervous tension. As they all walk up the stairs to Takafumi's apartment, he talks with Chiaki, who had uploaded a new video to the internet, which irked Soe. Upon arriving at the apartment, Soe warns Sumika that her brother and Takafumi are men who think of women as collectibles like in manga. However, Sumika doesn't buy it. In the living room, the fish head altar is seen, and Sumika mentions it's an Obon offering, but Soe notes how offerings are normally either a cucumber or eggplant. A brief conversation between Takafumi and Sumika reveals that a no-spirit flag was raised to prevent Uncle from flying home. Soe overhears parts of the conversation and tries to leave, with Sumika believing the apartment is a cult gathering. Just then, Uncle arrives home and his assuring smile freaks out Soe, who asks Sumika not be proselytized into his cult. On the other hand, Uncle believed she was talking about the sake of videos he uploads online and downplays it as fictitious. Uncle's admission only makes Soe believe he's a con artist, but Sumika clarifies that he merely makes YouTube videos online. Soe then picks up that Sumika has feelings for Takafumi. Hence, she decides to test if Takafumi reciprocates the feelings. Distracting Sumika by asking for some coffee, Soe then shows Takafumi 2 pictures of her and Sumika to see his reaction. However, he is more transfixed on a couple of random men in the pictures. Sumika picks up on the facade and intervenes by bumping Chiaki into Takafumi, who Soe didn't recognize due to his growth spur. Things take a dramatic turn after Uncle learns that Soe is an old friend of Sumika and shows her his magic, revealing what Sumika looked like in middle school. Chiaki was also intrigued by the magic, and Takafumi and Sumika alerted Uncle about what he was doing, prompting him to use his magic to erase their memories. However, Takafumi prevents this by restraining Uncle, allowing Sumika to drag Soe and Chiaki out of the apartment. After this, Sumika scolds Uncle for nearly erasing Soe and Chiaki's memories, and Uncle recalls experiencing a similar situation with Elf at a hot spring. Uncle then shows a memory of him at one where Elf approaches him and rewinds his memory for clearer context behind the situation. When the two arrive at the hot spring, Uncle immediately notices that its sign is in Japanese, which Elf notes that Uncle truly was a transfer like Mabel said. Furthermore, Elf reveals that the hot springs founder Murayama created the place 20 years ago, but died at the old age of 88 after staying in the world for 10 days. The hot springs owner, Grandstone, then greets and welcomes them to the hot spring named Purgatory. Grandstone also reveals that transfer people who die are sent back to their original world. Skipping forward to Elf and Uncle's conversation, Uncle finds out that he's sharing a room with Elf, which displeases him. The owner's young daughter offers to prepare him a room of his own, but Elf scares her away. Despite Elf's excitement about the room's style, Uncle downplays it and drags his Futon into another room to rest in. Upset that she'll be resting alone, Uncle returns to the room and gives Elf a questionable foot massage. This gets interrupted when Alicia, Edgar, and Reika were revealed to have been eavesdropping on their moment together. As Alicia and Elf clear things up with each other, Uncle is paid by Reika and Edgar for his previous help slaying the hedgehog monster. When Uncle asks what the hero party is doing there, Reika reveals they're training themselves to become stronger by refining their strength and skills. Uncle becomes intrigued when he hears special skill and uses his memory magic on Edgar, showing his training with Reika. It also reveals a fancy sheath being used as a laundry rack, and upon seeing it, Elf asks where the group found it and heads off alone to its location after learning it. Uncle explained to Takafumi and Sumika that Elf was going after an elven treasure. The memory continues with Uncle asking if the hot spring was well protected, and Reika reveals that it was built with God's blessing. However, a giant monster immediately set fire to one of the buildings, leaving Uncle speechless. Under the influence of the hypno beast, Linnea, the innkeeper's daughter, sets loose the monster into the hot spring area. To Uncle's dismay, he's incapable of casting any magic thanks to a couple of anti-magic birds flying around, which forced him to use a couple of his physical enhancement magic. Watching this scene unfold, Takafumi and Sumika internally note how awkwardly Uncle used them. They then watch as Edgar and Reika supposedly praise Uncle. However, it turns out they meant someone else. Having his hopes raised and then shattered, Uncle retreats to the bathroom, but not before telling the two to continue watching his memory. When they do, Edgar and Reika praise Uncle, which Takafumi and Sumika try to tell Uncle, but are prevented by his door and upset mood. With Uncle locked in the bathroom, Takafumi insists they continue watching Uncle's memory, which irks Sumika. As the memory continues, Uncle defeats one of the anti-birds using wind, fire, and ice magical talismans. The remaining bird was sniped by Elf using the scabbard she located in the mountains and a pair of magical glasses. While the memory shows Elf sniping at Uncle to get his attention, Uncle explains to Takafumi and Sumika about the anti-magic bird's demonic breath that suppresses magic capabilities. Because of the lingering demonic breath stench, Uncle could not use his magic. Returning to where Alicia's side, she was pursued by the now hypnotized Edgar, Reika, and Linnea. Uncle regroups with her, and she heals his burn wounds. After Uncle twists Alicia's wand in hopes there is a useful mechanism to it, two barriers are erected around the two groups. Once Alicia wasn't so flustered, she proceeded to undo the hypnotization spell cast on Edgar, Reika, and Linnea. After she does this, the hypno beast tries to attack her. However, she one-punches it with a move originally used by Reika. Uncle reveals to Takafumi and Sumika that Alicia's wand boosted her physical strength and granted her access to Reika's special technique. Once the hypno beast regains consciousness, it flees and attracts the attention of some monster hounds, which are dealt with by Uncle's water magic. Said magic also douses the flames surrounding the area. Afterward, Uncle erects a barrier around the now exposed bathing area, which pleases the hot spring owners because it has a lovely view of the mountain area. Later, Uncle takes another bath and was joined by Alicia, who unintentionally exposes herself a little, which Uncle erases his memory of. In the present, Uncle faces the consequences for breaking the rule about regaining an erased memory, but blames it on seeing something perverted. As the memory continues, it's learned that not only Alicia is the same age as Uncle, but he's a few months younger than her. Alicia then confesses that she has no memories of dating before she was 9 years old. So Alicia asks Uncle to use his memory magic to figure out the cause of her amnesia, and he agrees. Alicia's earliest memory that she can recall was being rescued after goblins attacked her carriage. She'd later be adopted by the village Reika and Edgar lived in, received the name Alicia, and is believed to have lost her family from the goblins who ambushed her carriage. Guilt-ridden from what he had watched, Uncle reveals to Alicia that he had erased her memory twice and what the memories entailed. Furthermore, Uncle reveals he's from an otherworld and his motive to why he broke the barrier that he later repaired. Upset by Uncle's revelations, Alicia demands that he never use his memory eraser magic again. Uncle agrees to Alicia's demand, but only agrees to never use it on her again, which deeply surprises Alicia. The scene then gets messy when Alicia tries to recreate the lost memory of her uncle. An elf snipes at them from afar. Once the memory was over, Takafumi and Sumika advised Uncle not to erase any more of his memories, like when he had his meltdown in the bathroom. However, Uncle revealed that he didn't, but used what's called a kill sensitivity technique. Takafumi tries this technique himself, which shocks Fumika. Uncle tries to show Sumika and Takafumi the Sega Saturn warning voice from a Strikers 1945 disc. However, he becomes disconcerted after learning there's no CD player in the household and that the new generation hasn't heard the warning voice. So, after Takafumi looks up an alternative on the internet, Uncle compromises by using his Sega Saturn to play the warning voice. Sumika then asks what would happen if someone tried to play a Sega Saturn CD on a CD player. Uncle briefly explains it to Sumika and then throws a non sequitur about a singing beast he once encountered. Curious to know more, Uncle shows them the memory that takes place a month after the hot spring. In it, Uncle accepted a quest to subjugate singing beast in a forest. Wasting no time, Uncle uses his magic to charge at the beast, but crashes into it. He learns that the monster was made of ice and created by Mabel. The two catch up, and Uncle learns that despite being in a dangerous area, Mabel is protected by the beast robe she wears, which is enchanted with illusion magic. He also learns that after being dismissed by the royal guards, Mabel now lives in the forest with the monster acting as a scarecrow. Once Mabel finished her explanation, Uncle readied himself to finish off Mabel as he was still committed to the subjugation quest he accepted. However, Mabel agrees to leave the forest and made the monster disappear. The two then sit by a campfire and discuss what Mabel should do from there on out. Mabel refuses to sell the ring, so he suggests she become a bard. Mabel then blushes and gets too embarrassed, although she enjoys the thought of becoming an idol after hearing Uncle say she'd become famous in his world. Their discussion takes a sad turn when Mabel notes his desire to return home. Hoping to cheer him up, Mabel offers to sing a song from his homeland. The song Uncle has Mabel sang was a BGM from Sonic the Hedgehog. Hearing this song causes Uncle to pass out onto Mabel's lap in a euphoric daze. She then pleasantly sings the Knights of Order song. Unbeknownst to them, the Knights of Order planned to ambush them, but were taken out by Elf, who gave off a menacing glare toward the two. Uncle then stops the memory, and Takafumi asks about Uncle's love for video game music. He confirms it and shows a memory of his childhood playing the game Dynamite Heady. Before the memory plays out, Uncle learns he had mispronounced the heroine's name Fingy as Fingy, causing him to melt down. Afterward, Uncle tries to record a UET video as Elf, but his door mood concerning the mispronunciation of Fingy's name still lingers. Takafumi and Sumika brush off Uncle's obsession with names, but he argues that names are essential, as once told by Elf, who gave her real name the following morning after his encounter with Mabel. Shocked and intrigued by this, Takafumi and Sumika force Uncle to replay the memory. In it, the psychotic-looking Elf confronts the nonchalant Uncle over him, addressing Alicia and Mabel by their first names despite knowing her longer. An argument breaks out between them, and amid it, Uncle reveals his actual name as Yusuke Shibazaki, making Elf flustered. She then asks how Uncle writes it, so he draws it on the ground with a stick and explains the meaning behind his first and last name. Uncle then asks for Elf's, and she answers it as Suzail Gir Ziegelnel blah blah blah. However, Elf's name was too long for Uncle to remember, so he recommends he call her Sui and briefly explained its meaning. A brief bonding moment would occur between them until Mabel arrived. Once Mabel arrived, they investigated the ruins that Uncle had intended to explore called Jado Hokora, the place Mabel mentioned in her song from the other day. While they talk about the ruin's history compared to Mabel's song, Uncle destroys the ruin, causing Hokora to appear. Before Uncle fights it, Takafumi and Sumika force Uncle to stop the memory from playing and demand to know why Uncle destroyed the temple, whereas he did in hopes of finding a way back home. To make matters worse, two other memories that pop up reveal that Uncle had destroyed a couple of other ruins associated with the one he had just destroyed. An epic battle occurs between Elf, Mabel, and Uncle versus Hokora, who manages to possess Uncle until he's knocked out by Rega. Alicia and Edgar then arrive and assist in the battle ahead. Learning that Uncle was under a mind control spell, Alicia uses her wand to try and break him out of it, but instead triggers dark memories from Uncle's past. Ruminating on said memories, Uncle walks toward his friends, muttering various things, but snaps out of his trance and uses a bottle containing the fire dragon to deplete its life energy. This would allow Uncle to defeat it, but Blaze Dragon revives, a creature without a physical form and something that Uncle had intended to defeat. However, Alicia notes that the Blaze Dragon is immune to holy magic. It also has fast regenerative powers and proximal mind control, so it's impossible to get close. MC mentions that Mabel has the God-freezing sword. Everyone was surprised, but when they looked at her, the sword had already half melted, and Mabel was looking like a scared kitten. Despite the odds against them, Elf was confident they could slay the Blaze Dragon by outpacing its healing ability. Elf's confidence stemmed from her ancient sword, capable of canceling the deified Blaze Dragon's magic, and the enchanted jewel on her forehead, making her immune to mental attacks. Alicia then asks to chat with our MC. Far from the group, she blushingly discusses the hot spring situation, but is soon interrupted by our jealous Elf-san. Mabel then formally introduced herself, but everyone was put off by her response to their kind gesture. Deified Blaze Dragon then starts acting, prompting Elf to ask MC embarrassingly to make her fly. He does by chaining his wrist to Elf's waist. Believing she's useless for the impending battle, Mabel tries to bail, but the dragon doesn't allow her. MC then suggests that Mabel be used as bait, and begrudgingly, she runs toward the aggro dragon that flings a boulder at her, but is saved by Alicia using one of Edgar's sword moves. As Uncle and Elf-san have a heart-to-heart about Elf's confidence in defeating the Blaze Dragon, Alicia's group handle fighting the dragon. Before long, the Blaze Dragon becomes airborne, and our duo decide to move against it. Upon Takafumi's request, the video is paused for him to regain his composure, as he was tearfully excited that a true fantasy battle was about to happen. Uncle then prepares some coffee as Takafumi uses the toilet. Through the combined efforts of Uncle, Elf, and Mabel, they defeat the deified Blaze Dragon. Immediately after this, Uncle rescues Elf from falling from the sky, and they have a tangible bonding moment together. However, Uncle ruins it by mentioning that Elf has a funky burnt smell, making her flustered and fidgety, causing them to crash land on the ground. There, Uncle recollects the divine might residue from the deified Blaze Dragon, which Elf admonishes, but Uncle has his own goals for it. Alicia's group then regroups with Uncle and Elf, and immediately Mabel asks Uncle to be praised for her effort. Uncle then admits it would have taken him 4 months and caused significant collateral damage. He then bows to the group, extends his gratitude toward them, and personally thanks Mabel. Uncle's compliment flusters Mabel, and Alicia notes that she was happy to receive the compliment, making Mabel blurt out that Alicia also wants to be cradled by him. Instead, Uncle misinterpreted that Alicia wanted to fly too, so he grabbed her, and they leaped high into the sky. Once they land on the ground, Uncle does the same for the eager Edgar and Draga, while Mabel faces an enraged Elf. Elf's rage was exacerbated by Uncle thanking Mabel for her song the other night and giving her another ring. Before Elf can lash out, Uncle accidentally reveals his real name after Mabel and Alicia become confused that he wasn't being addressed by the alias he gave them. However, the two of them prefer the aliases he gave them, which elates Uncle, but upsets Elf for easily giving his name to them. As Elf lightly pounds Uncle, the bottle containing the divine might falls from his clothes, and he reveals to the curious Elf his plans with it. Uncle intends to cultivate the mass of warp energy found inside of it to create a portal big enough for him to return home. In light of this, Elf tries to destroy the bottle of divine might. In the present, Takafumi and Sumika were shocked by Elf's reaction. Sumika then asks if Uncle had achieved his goal, but is stopped short by Takafumi, who wanted to savor the suspense, despite Sumika's worry that it'd take him another 14 years to find out. Nonchalantly, Uncle reveals that he's a solo player, and instead of an extended time, it didn't take him too long. With Takafumi feeling hungry, Uncle offers to treat everyone to ramen, to Takafumi and Sumika's delight. After they enjoy their ramen and walk home, Takafumi reflects on everything that had occurred that past year. Upon returning home, the memory spirit acts up and reveals a memory that, when Takafumi sees it, shows Uncle restrained and in prison.